Greetings, YouTube. I am in the process of working on this page for coloring. Thought I'd share some of this with you. This is the second to last story page for End of the Impossible Book 2. And at this point, I've got the, the flats done. Let's see. So there's the original. Whoops. Put that on and turn overlayer off. I've got the original flats here. I went and did the base colors, which are also very flat. I've got line work and some color holds going on already. There's the color holds taken off. Also, I'm going to pre-apologize. My wife is upstairs. She has a cold and is not feeling good. So if you hear coughing or you hear somebody walking around, that's her. So she is also going through college exams at the moment, and so life is not good for her at the moment. But she's getting through it. She's a trooper. So first thing, just kind of walking through the process that I go through here to get where I am now. This layer is the actual line work, my scan page. I put it in, and I have, if you've seen my other video, I have a template file set up that I just kind of plug this into, and then a pile of photo filters that I work through to correct things, put it in black and white, eliminate the blue line, get the colors, or not the colors, but the blacks to be more black instead of the grays that they tend to be, and then get the whites cleaned up as well. And then, so it's a set of levels layers, there's one black and white filter, there's a couple of color layers of just pure black and pure white, just to get everything up to the level that they need to be. I also have two layers for Zipatones that I had made ages ago, and then on the very top I have this, actually this is a registration set that I use for, like, the yellow is the bleed area, and then everything in the red gets chopped off in the printing process. But once I put that in, I turn that off. And so getting back to the flats, we got the flats layer. That's next thing I do. Once the line work's all set up, usually I will put the line work in, and as I'm flatting, I'll tick back to this section and do additional cleanups. A lot of times I find pencil marks and white out and whatnot that shows up once I get the flats going, and usually I have to do some additional cleanup in that, and then once I get that cleaned up, I take the final line work and make a selection of it and plug it into here. This is a black layer, just a color layer, and I use a layer mask in a selection, and I punch out what I don't need. So if I turn off the layer mask, this is what it looks like, because I have color holds down there. It's just black, and then that is my actual final line work. And then I have a color hold layer that is I forget what you call it when you don't merge them, but you link them, whatever that term is, I don't remember at the moment. But so I can just put in, like you just saw, not that. I guess I have to do both, but I can turn on or put in the color holds without being, making a bunch of selections. So and then after that, the next step I've already done here is the photos. Like, I use a lot of for textures, I use a lot of stock photos but photos that I've taken. I've developed a library of those, and I'll plug them in and put them in, overlay layers or whatever. Filters the flat color best, and it just creates this sort of base texture that I'll work on top of. And like here you can see this is actually a cover for a composition notebook that I stretched and colored and used it as a basic texture there, just something to build on later. So now, since I've got those stages taken care of, the next step is to do the actual colors, which I've already done this character's hair. So I'm going to turn on all these layers, turn on the over, turn on the letters, even though I don't have anything in there. Just getting everything kind of back to where I started. So I'll grab it with the magic wand. These two layers I'm going to leave basically finished. And then I go into this layer, which is sort of it's a purple layer that I use as a base color. And it is a very saturated purple layer, so it pops out a lot. So depending on what color I use, because it's a regular layer and it's set to, for some reason, I filled it with at 50% opacity, I believe. So it's, that's why you can see the checkered board there. But it, allows things to work with whatever color I have underneath. But the problem is that because it's so saturated to begin with, I usually, as a matter of process, take it and run that saturation down. But these purples are basically just a form for creating form and depth as a first step. And I typically am very quick and loose with this and just kind of layer it on and get it generally where I want it to be, and then I go back and pull it back off, just using the black and white on the layer mask. So once I get it kind of where I want it, and then I'll use Control U. Whoops, I got to flip over here. Control U. That's not what I want. Control U. That's what I want. I just slide that down until it's pretty comfortable looking. That's a little too much. Right there. This is a brighter scene, so I might go a little bit more saturated than normal on her skin. Right. Yeah, that's better. And sometimes I'll lower the lightness, but in this case, right in there, go with that. And make sure you flip back over to the layer mask, because I forget that all the time and I end up coloring on the layer when I don't want to. So at this point, then I can go back and kind of clean up and just adjust things a little bit more based on the color that I have. I'll usually do all of one color on each of the panels, each of the character, wherever he or she appears in the panels. And let's see. Just focusing on the form at this moment. I have another layer that I use to focus on shadows, and I'll get to that here in a second. Also, I tend to use this mode with my screen. Let's see. Okay, that works. I also usually work, especially with this brush, work from back to front, and then go in and kind of erase things that are up in front that I overlap when I shouldn't. And that helps me just keep things a little clean. Oops. I like working on the layer masks because none of it's permanent. It's easy to edit. It's easy to edit later, which is a big deal sometimes. Coloring, this is the first book I've colored digitally, like the entire book. And the previous End of the Impossible book was all hand painted on the original art. But that was incredibly difficult to edit. And that was the big reason why I decided to do this one digitally. Just having that flexibility that I didn't have with watercolor and the ink. So I try to leave this coloring as editable as possible, so I don't flatten much of anything. And I find later, because I also make digital proofs and put them on my phone and then review them oftentimes later, and it's a good way to have a fresh look at it in a smaller scale, kind of a thumbnail in its own way. And it gives me that fresh eyeball on it. So that I can really see if I've screwed something up, or if something's not quite working, or especially with the colors, like my phone shows the colors a little differently than my computer screen. So second perspective on those. Is it still working? So I'm in this second layer now, which is just a very dark blue layer. And I do kind of the same thing as I do with the purple, but I do it in a more low light kind of way. The purple really adds a lot of warmth to especially like skin, and that blue helps kind of push it back a little bit and add a little more form without being too poppy. And I tend to sort of use the blue as a I don't know how to describe it. It's part shadow, part form. Just in conjunction with the purple. A lot of times, if I'm doing a character that's in the smaller characters like this, I pretty much stick with just the purple. So larger characters, I'll start using the blue a little more strategically than I do with the purple. Let's see. Oops, brush took off on me. Come on, eyeball. So I think because you probably have the gist of this at this point, I'm going to go ahead and focus on this character. So next step is moving up to the main colors. This color is actually this character's hair, which I've already rendered. It's like a preset photo filter that I stuck on there with a couple of things. It's the crystallize and add noise smart filters, and then I just punch out another masking layer with the flats, and I think that's set to overlay. Yeah, but with skin tones, especially because I have that purple and that blue, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go back to the flat, grab the flat color, and then I'll add something to warm it up. Oops, I did that wrong. I'll add a color to warm it up, like, let's see, there, let's do that. And then kind of get a nice, that's not quite there. Let's do that. And then again, I'll do something with, sometimes I'll slide things a little bit. I don't want it to be the exact same color as the flat, basically. And I'm trying to, give a little dimension again. This will cover up some of that purple and blue, which is fine. But it evens out because I'm pretty sparse with it. I'll start with usually the cooler of the two colors I've made, and just sort of work it in. Still, again, just focusing on form. I don't want it to be, too overpowering. A lot of times I go back in with an eraser tool and pull this back off a bit. Not, let's tweak this. It's not quite there. That's better. Yeah, that's fine where it was. Preview. Yeah, I like that better. And then because that's the only color on this layer, I can just grab it with the eyedropper. I set my eyedropper to current layer only because I end up grabbing the wrong color a lot. So then once I get, some of the form in place here, and I'm going to put a little bit, whoops, that's too much. Some of the form here. Just, this brush is very splattery, so it doesn't overwhelm things a lot. It has a lot of texture built into it, even though it's, you don't really see it work like that. So it sort of has a pointillism effect with the colors that are underneath it. I'm grabbing the same brush with the eraser tool. Sometimes I have a smoother brush that I'll use for the eraser tool, or sometimes I will have something that has a lot of texture in it, very fine, gritty texture, and I'll use that because it allows that same sort of pointillism effect to come through. At this point, I'll start putting in some more highlights. That's probably a little too. There we go. Yeah. I don't typically blend a whole lot with color at this point. But I can if I need to. Might make this brush bigger. I have another version of it that's a bigger brush because it doesn't expand very well. It starts getting kind of goofy looking and too clustery when I make it larger. You know what? I think I didn't get her second hand in there at all, did I? Okay, so I'm going back to the blue real quick. Actually, let's go back to the purple. So I didn't do that either. The more I put that in, the more it sort of recedes that hand. Even over here where I've already painted on top, I can still kind of build that up. Knock this blue back a little bit here. Oops. And then you just balance things out a little bit as I go. That's the advantage of working on these different layers with layer masks. Nothing is, blended together in an obvious way, so I can balance it out if I need to, which, because I'm not great at coloring, that's a big thing. Let's see. These up a little bit. I don't know if I want this hand to pop out too much. I might dial it back just a little bit more. Eraser. All right. So then next step I have what I call cast shadow, which that is set to multiply at 70% opacity. So it's just another layer, and I do just what it says. I cast the shadows. So I've already got some hair going shadowy here. Light source is coming in from the big window on this side is a big window behind him. So I'm going to just, let's see. Why is that not? Oh, I'm in eraser. Help if I get in a brush. All right, so I have just a hard brush that I use for flats as a pencil. I just put that in and rough in the shadows where I think they should be. Let's see, her face is going to be blocking this. So there, all that. This over here. Cast shadow back here. Oops, here. This thumb, take that out. Let's see, so, oops. This, that, all that. Neck. And then, let's see, not this. Not that. Oops. Shoulders can be really complex. And then behind this bit of her dress. Okay. Honestly, my Wacom tablet doesn't work super well right now. The brush is a little bit more spread apart for whatever reason, or the sensitivity, I don't know, something's messed up, but I'm just dealing because I don't know what's wrong with it or what to fix, but I'm just running with it. Okay, so that's how I lay those in, and then let's see, hair. Those are all the cast shadows. Let me fix this one. I think that'll work. So then I switch to soft brush, and I start. I might go bigger on this. Why not? And I just sort of brush that back out in a way that describes the form, especially off of bounced shadows. This whole, oops, put this back in. this whole scene has a very bright sunlit situation going on. So the bounced light is going to be a major factor. I'm just going to pull a little bit off there. And this arm. And I could be, making selections of this to help keep everything organized a little easier, but honestly, I'm just too lazy for that. The brush is generally pretty precise, and honestly, it doesn't need to be super clean. Bounce light there. I'm going to keep it more on her neck, keep it more on her face, on her lower face. Let's see. Actually, that's probably not a... Let's go back and put this back. Oops. I'm just using an actual pencil tool at the moment, just to have 100%. Okay, I think that's basically what I want from this. Let me tweak this one spot. Usually I leave the edges pretty hard. Every once in a while I'll sort of soften up something like here on her cheek maybe. And I'm still using this very soft brush. And it just adds a little dimensionality to certain places. Since this is the cast shadows, it's, it works better if it is a little bit hard edged, but I don't want it super hard edged either. Okay. For demonstration purposes, that does it. And then the last thing is the highlights, which is kind of the same process in reverse as the cast shadows. So usually a pencil. This is on a screen layer set to 60% opacity, and it just works with the flats color and just kind of pulls it out, create something a little different from what's there. I typically keep it as far from the cast shadows as I can. I use one or the other as a guide. Sometimes I do the highlights first. And, let's see. There, and that. Maybe a little bit there. Highlight. And maybe I'll stick a soft brush on this and just sort of fan that out just a touch, and then work it back with, that needs to be a little bit more. Work it back with the soft brush again. I don't want it to, be super obvious, especially when it's facing like a sunlight source type. When it's more of a artificial light and it's more small and intense, then it's, it can be a little bit more extreme. But right now it needs to be kind of diffused. that into the cast shadows. So I'm going to get my pencil tool back out, run that off. Since this character has very soft features, I'm trying to have, you know, fairly rounded shapes going on right now. Soft highlights. So you get a lot of back and forth at this time. There we go. And sometimes if I have something going on that I don't like being so extreme, I'll go to my gradient tool. I have it set to circular pattern with is it fade to, or color to fade, and 20% opacity, I think. And I'll just kind of soften or use that to dial it down, especially, you know, if it's really sticking out. And there's a little too much there. Just like that. That's basically it. That's basically how I approach all of it. I have a different set of brushes depending on the object, but it's kind of the same process through those layers. If I have a different color, because I have a blue and a yellow, or orange I guess it is, highlight layers, I'll put that on this layer, which is screen, set to 100%. But I just keep working through those layers until I get everything done. So anyway, if you're like, why do you work this way? The answer is because I was not comfortable with coloring to begin with, and I needed to format my layers in a very concise, fairly rigid for my own abilities, workflow that I could just kind of dial right through. That way I could minimize the thinking process, because honestly I would get stuck and I would lose track of what color I was trying to do, or what I was trying to color on. And so I had to dumb it down for myself, and this is the process that works the best so far. So anyway, hope you might have been able to enjoy this and learn something from it, and thanks for watching.